Hey buddy, it's Peter, and this is the Honda Grom, a bike that I admit I just didn't get. But now I do, and in this video we're going to talk about a lot more than just the bike, and we're going to talk about things that other videos aren't talking about to talk to you about what this is, why it's cool, and why you may or may not want one. So before we go too far, I want to thank Riverview Honda for giving me complete access to their entire Honda lineup. Everything that Honda makes I can review. I suppose I could review generators if I wanted to, but the point is I want to give them thanks for doing that. So do me a favor, hit the like button just to thank them, maybe leave a nice comment. Thanks Riverview Honda for this one. But if you want to help this channel grow, I review, of course, Honda stuff and all kinds of other makes of models of motorcycles and power sports and all kinds of different things. If you want to help me out with that channel, if you want to help me out with just this video, just do me a favor, watch to the end. That's all I ask of you. You can always hit the like, you can always hit subscribe, all those things, but just watch to the end. That's the thing that helps me the most. All right, let's get going with this review. All right, now after thanking Riverview Honda, the first thing I'm going to do is mention that Kawasaki also makes one of these, but let me clarify why I'm mentioning that. First of all, when I first started doing this channel, I worked almost exclusively with Kawasaki, and I've been growing it since then, and I never really understood Kawasaki's entry into this market. It just seemed like a bike that didn't sell very well, I didn't get it, and if you look at the spec sheet, it's really not that impressive. Whereas the Grom, it's a very similar spec sheet, but this thing has a lot of sales record, and it's done really well for Honda, and they've even expanded their entire mini moto lineup, and we're going to talk about some of the differences between this and other mini motos in the lineup. So why does Honda's lineup expand when other manufacturers' copies of this bike just sit there in the showroom? Well, it comes down to community, and this is what's really cool about the Grom. The bike in itself is not a huge spec sheet. You can point out, I mean, if any other manufacturer releases a 125cc engine and they talk about horsepower to the decimal point, 9 point something for horsepower, you're just gonna say, why not get this bike? Why not get that bike? In my entire channel, I've talked about you don't buy a bike for the spec sheet, you buy it because you're connected to it. And why you're connected to that bike could be a variety of reasons. The Grom has developed this cult following, and when you think about when bikes really started to when Honda bikes really started to gain traction here in North America, it really became about a community of riders. You know, you meet the nicest people on a Honda, so it was separate and different than the Harley type riders. It was separate and different than the typical motorcycle riders of the time, but those early Honda bikes, they had to be tweaked, they had to be played with, they had to be maintained, they had to be all these things. And now the Grom is in our world in an age of internet. If there's anything you want to do to a motorcycle, you can do it to a Grom within reason, but you have a community of people that are super helpful, have already figured out all the little things you want to do, that can show you what can be done, what will be done, and you probably won't come up with something that's totally unique that has at least never been tried before. If you want to tinker with a motorcycle, you can do that all with this because of the community. So while the bike is fairly low spec, and I will review what the specs are on this bike, you have to keep in mind that you're getting a community, and there's so much more to the ownership experience of this than just riding it. And that's what makes this bike super cool. So to start with this review, let's go over the bike, what it is, what it's great for in stock form. And then as you continue your research, you can find other channels that can really expand things, and I'm gonna help you sort of figure out what to look for in those. So let's start with the front wheel. All right, this is the broken record part of my reviews. You always hear me say on the reviews, if you want to figure out a motorcycle, you got to start by looking at the front wheel. That's what tells you the manufacturer's intent for this bike. And this is obviously a manufacturer's idea of bringing back mini bikes from like the 60s and stuff. But there's some interesting things going on here. So first of all, the tire itself has a sport bike type profile. Now remember, I reviewed the Honda Monkey already. It's got a little different profile. It's more of an off-road tire, but you have this sharper edge. This isn't like the tires were in the 60s. So you have something here that's sport bike-like in its profile. Now we're not claiming any crazy specs or anything like that, but that's a good start. We'll get back to that in a second. Then you have the brakes here. You have disc brakes here. A lot of bikes from the past used to have crappy drum brakes. This one's got disc brakes, so more braking power than you would need for a bike of this speed, bike of this weight. Then you've got something interesting here, upside down forks. That's not something you typically see in lower end bikes. You usually see it in a little bit higher end bikes, but the upside down forks, see, you could say in theory, what they do is they give you more stiffness up top and they give you less unsprung weight. I don't think this is about the unsprung weight. I think they realize that, hey, full-size adults are going to be riding this bike. This is going to give us something that gives us the suspension travel that we need, the suspension stiffness that we need, but more importantly, up higher on the suspension fork, they are stiffer up tall. That's why you use them in race bikes. So again, this thing's understanding like, hey, there's going to be some forces on this bike. People are gonna goof around on this bike. Let's make sure we've got some stiff upper fork tubes there, and that's what you've got. So we should also talk about the small wheel. Now, yes, this is a much smaller wheel, a 12-inch wheel instead of a, I think it's a 12-inch wheel. I just said that off the top of my head, but I haven't actually checked. Pretty sure it's a 12-inch wheel. I'll correct it on the side. I don't see it on the sidewall right here. Yeah, there we go, 12-inch wheel. It's a 12-inch wheel. So the typical sport bike is a 17-inch wheel. A typical off-road bike is a 19 to 21-inch wheel. That's diameter, so that's the distance across the rim there. This one's 12 inches. But what that does, if you think about a sport bike wheel being 17-inch, a lot of bikes are similar, and they give a 17-inch front wheel for the sport bike, and they give a 19 or 21-inch wheel for the adventure version of that bike. The sport bike wheel is the smaller wheel. It gives you a little bit more nimbleness. This bike is incredibly nimble, even at slower speeds, and that's part of what makes it kind of have that sport bike kind of feel, unique kind of feel, even at the speeds that this bike's gonna travel at. So a little bit of uniqueness in here, more than just style. Let's move on. All right, normally I try to show the fuel tank and the engine together just to kind of give you a view of the heart of the bike, but we're gonna go just the engine here. And what's interesting about this is just the general positioning of this. Like I said before, this is a 124 point something cc engine, so 125 cc is what they call it. It is air cooled, that's good for simplicity, but it's not fully simplistic. It hasn't got a carburetor, it's got fuel injection. To me, I'm a fan of that, I think that's good. What's also interesting though is you have some design choices here that are different. A lot of times these singles are sort of cantered up, right? They're kind of like the piston is up here and it's moving that way inside of this case, but this is all laid down. What that does is it lowers the center of gravity. That makes for a bike that is not only fairly lightweight, but also the center of gravity is very low. If you think about everything that's on the shot here, everything is down low. So that's going to also contribute to handling, which is kind of funny that they actually pay attention to that. There's a reason they do that, but it also makes everything super easy to work on. And this is where that community of riders really comes in handy. Everything is easy to get to, everything's easy to work on. There's a lot of things you can do with this, and there's simplicity. No radiator, nothing like that. You got your spark plug in there, all sorts of stuff that make it really simple to work on, just as the bike is. So if you know nothing about bikes, and you want to get into maintenance or even disassembling the entire thing, learning about engines, wait till your warranty's done and disassemble the thing and put it back together. You can do that because it's so simple inside here. Everything's simple, and that's one of the key things to this. Do people tweak it up to get a little extra power? Yes, you can. Lots of things you can do, but just from the factory, you've got something here that is pretty well laid out, pretty well engineered for making this a fun little bike. So if we're going to talk about it being a fun bike, we have to see how it fits. Now I'm about 6 feet tall, proportional 6-footer, and you can see me jumping over this. This is a bike that actually fits me. That's one thing that's always surprised me. I always thought this was for shorter riders or anything else. And of course, shorter riders can easily fit. You can see my hip point here, legs are easily bent, knees are to the ground. And again, it feels even lighter than it is just because all that center of gravity is quite low. That's going to contribute to making a very fun, nimble bike, even at slower speeds, right? If you get to a heavier sport bike, you have to go faster to kind of make it have fun. Light, nimble bikes and bikes that are positioned with great center of gravity feel lighter than they are, and that's going to make it good. So if you see me sitting up here, you can see I'm quite comfortable. Now, I did review the Monkey just about a week or so ago. The Monkey is a single passenger. This one is a dual passenger. This one has a little bit larger seat. You don't have to take a rider with you, but if you wanted to stretch out, kind of move around and on a longer ride, you can do that on this bike because you have a single piece seat that does stretch out. Can you take someone else on this bike? Yes. Are you realistically going to do that for long trips? No, but keep in mind there's 50cc scooters out there that have 2 seats, and people zip around town on those all over the world. So 125cc is going to help. Now the other thing worth mentioning is the Grom used to have a 4-cylinder, did not have a 4-cylinder, although maybe somebody swapped one in. It used to have a 4-speed transmission. Now it has a 5-speed transmission. They updated that a couple years ago. That was one thing that owners were calling for, just a little bit more gearing, a little extra gear. So you now have a 5-speed transmission. Not everybody has that, and not everything in the Honda Mini Moto lineup has that. The other thing worth remembering is that this bike and the Monkey, they have a clutch. Now the other transmissions in the Mini Moto line, some of them don't have a clutch lever. They work the same way as a manual transmission. You have to back off the throttle, you switch the gear with your foot, and then you can come back on the throttle, but they are clutchless designs. The Grom and the Monkey, they both have a manual clutch here, super lightweight, really easy to learn on. If you're concerned about driving a manual transmission, but you're willing to learn, great bike to learn on. You're going to figure it out in a hurry. But if you don't want a clutch, there are other bikes in the Mini Moto lineup. Some of those are 4-speed transmissions still. So you're getting max performance from the factory with that 5-speed transmission on this bike. And you're getting to learn how to ride, some people would say a real motorcycle, but a traditional motorcycle that has a manual transmission. Now there are options in the bigger bike lineup from Honda, especially with dual clutch transmissions that are automatic essentially. There's an e-clutch system on some of their bikes now, which is, again, it can function sort of like an automatic in many situations. So it's not like you have to learn a clutch anymore, but if you want to tinker with something, you want to have something with a clutch, the Grom, the Monkey, they're the ways to go. So we're going to show you this bike a little up close. We're going to show you the controls in a second here. But I just want to show you the riding position here. Mirrors are fairly well positioned. Riding position, again, for a 6-footer, not really a problem. I'm quite comfortable and can ride this all day long. All right, so take a look at the dash. Before we go too far, there is a selection button there and a set button there, so you can do that. I want to show you that there are some red background pieces here. This is a single color dash, but if you see red on the dash, it's not that it's a 2-color dash, it's that those are permanently painted on. So let's turn the bike on. And this is where the Grom leads the pack in these mini motos, and really it's just what I wish they would do with the other mini motos. So first of all, you have a tachometer. We showed you the Monkey last week. It didn't have a tachometer. You can see the 8,000, just maybe 81, 82 8,200 RPM red line there. So the red line, again, painted on. This is just, you know, the black numbers on top. So that to me is a really nice thing to have, especially as you have a lower displacement bike, you want to ring it out, you know where your red line is. Monkey doesn't have that. I don't think some of the other bikes have it either. And then you have a lot of things going on here. You've got a gear indicator. So that is, again, very rare. It used to not happen at all. Most people my age learned on a bike that didn't have gear indicators. It's not something you need, but all of us, even experienced riders, as you have that gear indicator, you just use it all the time. So you're gonna see if you're in neutral or 1 through 5th gear, which is really nice to have. The other thing over here, fuel gauge, easy to read, and you can see that red shining through, so you can see how that red works. If that fuel light is really low, it blinks, and it looks like it's kind of blinking red because when that disappears, it's there. So nice thing to have in there. The other thing worth pointing out is something like the Monkey, the CB300, CB500 that we showed you before. It also has a black and white dash. Those dashes are harder to read. This is super simple to read. It's very clear, very good, and I wish, honestly, that Honda would do either TFT displays with some of the other bikes or just go back to this display. It works very well. It's easy to read. So you can see here, we've got 0 kilometers, we've got 4.5 liters per 100 kilometers average. Remember, never look at a bike in a showroom and just figure out what the fuel efficiency is going to be based on what you see in the showroom. This one has not driven enough to have any kind of accuracy in that, but let's cycle through here. So buttons are a little hard to push. You've got trip A, you've got trip B, and you've got, come on, back to the total kilometers there. So you do have a little bit of options there while showing you the fuel efficiency. And fuel efficiency is a huge part of this bike. It is absolutely fantastic when it comes to overall efficiency. All right, let's take a look at the controls now. So over here on the clutch side, a super, super light clutch lever here, easy to pull. Again, if you're gonna learn how to ride a bike with a clutch, this is gonna be one of the easiest ones to learn on. It's just easy to pull. You're gonna be shifting gears through town, so might as well have something that's easy to pull. This one has it. Now, a couple things that Honda bikes do that are a little different. You'll see on the Honda Rebel, I made the mistake of thinking that this didn't have a flash to pass. Honda Rebel has a button that's similar to this, but you could push it down here for the flash to pass. On other Honda bikes, you have a trigger up here for flash to pass. This one, if you want to flash that high beam, you're going to do it the old-fashioned way, just like we used to. So again, no flash to pass, a little bit simpler controls on this bike than a couple other of the bikes from Honda, which isn't a big deal, but it is worth noting. You do have a horn here, signal lights here. That's all typical Honda stuff. That's similar to everything else. No 4-way flashers. The other side, we'll show it to you while we're here just really quickly. The other side only has a start button, or a start button down here, and a kill switch up here. So sometimes you have a 4-way flasher on some of the other Honda bikes there. This one doesn't have it. Again, very basic controls, but very good dash, which tells you everything you could want to know in this bike. Let's take a quick look at the headlamp, tail lamp, and then we'll continue talking about this bike. All right, so take a look at the headlamp here, nice big light here. I did try to start it for a split second here, which I can do again, but I'm not running on the regular battery. You can sort of see the light flicker there. It is an LED light on this bike. So again, the reason I'm not running on a battery is Riverview Honda keeps their batteries like unused and brand new. So when you buy these bikes, you're getting that new battery, not something that's gone dead 17 times in the showroom and then given to you as a battery that's kind of worn out. So I'm using a booster pack on some of these videos to show you the controls here, just to get the lighting and everything else. So nice LED headlight there. One thing I really like about Honda's bikes though is you do have, and hopefully you can see it, lit signal lights here. So this is a marker light that's going to give you a little more width on the road. This is a big thing that I really like. Right now you can see that it is an incandescent bulb. It turns fully off when the signal light is on, but when they turn the signal light off, it goes back to its default position of being on. And again, I really like that. It gives you, gives you a little bit more width to the bike, keeps you visible in all kinds of weather and all kinds of day and night riding conditions as well. Taking a look at the back here, again, we explained why there's booster cables on this bike. That's a typical thing here, but if we hit the brakes here, you can see that nice bright LED light there. So again, modern lighting on this bike. It's gonna be nice and bright. Doesn't show great on camera, but nice and bright lighting there. It's gonna work really, really well to keep you visible on this smaller motorcycle. So who is this bike for and why would you want one? Well, here's the interesting thing. As I've done this channel, this happens almost every time in the YouTube comments, and I kind of enjoy it. I want to thank you guys for commenting, but what happens every time is I'll take a bike that's been out for 2 or 3 years, or the engine's been out for 4 or 5 years, and I'll review it, and I'll talk about who would want it and why it's great, and then someone will say, well, this and that bike has been made since, and it has a TFT display, or it has, you know, a little bit wider tire, or it has better spec, this and that. And you should just buy this one. You should not buy that one. And the reality with motorcycles is every motorcycle, no matter which one you get, is a compromise. It's not as comfortable as a car. It's not as convenient as a car or a truck or something else. There's only certain things that each motorcycle can do and do well. And the reality is that even if it's not top spec, or this one's got 3 more horsepower, and we're talking about a bike with like 140 horsepower. This one's got more power, so therefore it's better. It's not gonna matter. You gotta buy a bike that you love and you're gonna enjoy riding. And if you look at everybody's driveway in your neighborhood, everybody's not driving the Consumer Reports top-rated vehicle. People drive different vehicles for different reasons, and they can enjoy them. And motorcycling is all about enjoying that motorcycle. This thing loses on every spec comparison. And even when you get to price, you go, oh, for a little bit more, you could go to the 300. For a little bit more, you can go to the 500. You know, you always have that catch of, for a little bit more, you could get something that's supposedly better on the spec sheet. The reality is, what are you gonna have a ton of fun with? And people have a blast on the Grom. I'm gonna be honest, the Grom is probably not the first one I'd pick. I really like that monkey. I like the idea of the styling of it. I like the idea of a little bit more off-roadish kind of feel. To me, it's just super cool, but I'm probably not gonna modify a monkey that much. This thing is kind of like a base platform that gives you everything you could want that are harder to modify. Like, it just gives you the basic frame, engine, all that stuff's there, including the best dash in all of the mini motos out there, with the gear indicator, fuel efficiency, tachometer, easy to read dash, all that stuff's there for you. So if you want this, you can play with it, you can tweak it. Just from the factory floor, it's pretty fun. As you go on in the ownership experience, doing your old oil changes, doing other stuff like that, swapping out brake pads, you can do all that. If you want to upgrade brakes, upgrade suspension, maybe you're a lot heavier than I am and you want to upgrade suspension, there's all kinds of options to do that. There's a huge community that can help you with that. And there's all kinds of manufacturers outside of Honda that are also making parts and pieces for a bike like this that allow you to have a great experience. Owning a bike is about the ownership experience. You should look forward to it every time it's a nice day outside. You should look forward to it in the middle of the winter and go, hey, I want to tweak something in the middle of the winter. That's what you could do with a bike like this. You're not losing too much. It's simple to do. You can do a lot of the work yourself. If you don't know how to do it, you can learn to do it just using the online community. And that's what makes this bike great. You're joining a community. Now again, mostly online, but there's Grom meetups all over the place. There's a guy here in town that has a Grom that has studded tires, and it's his sole vehicle that he drives around all year round, including in the snow and cold like right now. I was just in here the other day. This is a bike with a community of people that can mod it up, and whether you want to mod it or not, it's something that's going to give you a lot of fun. You know it's a compromise when you're buying it. It's not something that's going to be great on the highway, although there's videos online of it, people taking it up highway speeds. But if you want to go on those 80 kilometer an hour, 50 mile per hour roads, this bike can handle it. And I've got a bike that's a 950cc, 948cc, 4-cylinder sport bike with Brembo brakes and Olin suspension, and you know where I'm searching to ride? 80 kilometer an hour roads, 50 mile per hour roads. That's the fun of this bike, is the real heart of motorcycling. This thing gives you everything you could possibly want, including the community of motorcyclists. And that's kind of what makes it fun to own a motorcycle, is having that camaraderie with other riders, you know, having that community out there that's willing to help you out, willing to give you ideas, willing to inspire you. The ownership experience of a motorcycle is a lot of fun, and there's probably no better ownership experience than the Grom right now in the motorcycling world because it's cheap and easy to get into, cheap and easy to play with and experience the entire motorcycling lifestyle. This thing's pretty cool. I really like it. If you want a little fun little street bike, this is going to be a great option. Again, I still kind of feel for the Monkey. Monkey doesn't have as nice dash. I wish it had this dash. Can't take a passenger on the Monkey. Not a big deal to me, but again, does sacrifice some practicality. Very cool stuff. And like I said, in the mini moto lineup, having a clutch and a 5-speed gives you that more traditional motorcycle experience. It's a great option to have. We're going to review a lot more mini motos, but let me know if you're part of this Grom community. Tell me some of the places. Fill in the places that they should look on the Grom community for stuff. Let people know in the comments, and let's have some fun with it. Thanks everybody for making it this far in the video. If you made it this far, do me a favor, leave a nice positive comment. Let's continue to grow this channel. The more we grow it, the more access I have, and we'll just keep going from there. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll talk to you in the next one.